Welcome to another edition of the Hawk Off the Press podcast. I'm your host, Gazette Hawkeyes reporter, John Steffi. I am excited to welcome back to the podcast Joey Woody, Iowa's Director of Track and Field and Cross Country. Joey, thanks for joining me.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
So in between your trips to Eugene, let's first talk about the one that already happened with the NCAA Outdoor Championships. 10 All-Americans on the men's side, including 7 first-teamers, and then women had 7 All-Americans, all second team, I believe.
Yeah.
So was that your expectation going in, or was that, what were you basically expecting going into that?
Well, just as a team, as a program, our men's team, I thought had a shot at fighting for top 20. Just with the number of qualifiers we had, we kind of fell a little bit short of that. I think we finished 34th or 37th, something like that. So we're a little, disappointed with our overall, team points, but I thought the guys that were there competed exceptionally well. And, we didn't have our full group of guys that we expected at the beginning of the outdoor season. We had a few that were banged up throughout the season and didn't quite get back, but I was really proud of how our guys competed and just missed making the finals in a couple of events. Same thing on the women's side. I thought they competed extremely well. Our women's 4x1, it's the first time we made it to the national meet, I think since 2016 or something like that in the 4x1. They broke the school record. They ran the second fastest all time at the national meet. So, I can't be too upset with that. And just the way they performed. And Sarah Hargrove had a tremendous meet, breaking the school record in the 100, and then just running a PR and just missing out on the final in the 200. So again, just kind of missing out on making first team All-American, but I was really proud of that event group. Women's 400 hurdle group didn't have, the best meet, but they've had a tremendous season. They were ranked number 1 all season as a group at the NCAA level. So, just really proud of just how the women competed all season. And we've got some girls going to the U.S. championships next week. So, really excited about, just finishing the season back in Eugene, and to be able to get to that level is tough. And we've got a really good group going. So I was really pleased with that. So yeah, we're just, getting ready for this next week with the U.S. championships, and then just kind of taking a little time off before cross country season comes back up.
And then how difficult is it when you're battling those injuries throughout the outdoor season after a pretty good indoor season?
I think it's more mental, for the coaches as well. But, I was really proud of just how none of the guys hung their head. They all kept their heads held high and just competed their tails off all season. And we just came up short, winning another Big Ten championship outdoor. And, they didn't let that get us down. They just continued to keep the same goals and high aspirations, both at the Big Ten level as well as the NCAA level. But it also bodes well for who we have returning next year. We have a ton of depth, and those guys are coming around. The guys that were injured are coming around. And I think, we're hoping Genoa might even feel good enough to compete next week at the U.S. Championship. So he's just a couple of weeks behind where we were hoping he'd be. But like I said, we've got a tremendous group of athletes, both men and women, and we're going to be bringing, majority of our points scored at the Big Ten championships back to our season next year.
And then on the women's side, it seemed to be one of improvement, even though probably not quite where you'd like it to be yet.
Yeah, like I said, the 400 hurdlers, had a tremendous season. I think just as a total team, we had way more qualifiers that were freshmen and sophomores that made it to Big Ten finals and scored points for the team than probably we've ever had. So we've got a lot of great depth and a lot of youth that are contributing at a very high level. I already mentioned Sarah just having a tremendous breakout season this year. Leah Love is a freshman that's run the number 3 time all time in the 100. So she's going to be a big contributor in both the 1 and the 2 next year. And then you look at our women's 800 group and what they've done this season. I feel like we've got a great group of athletes that are going to come in and really know what it takes to compete at this level, are going to really take off next season as well. So really excited about that. Plus we've got some great incoming freshmen next year that I think can step in and be immediate contributors for our team.
And then did you see the step up that Lucero was going to be taking, or was that a surprise to you as well?
Well, I started, working with her this fall, and I started seeing some really good things just in training. And just in general, I thought like she could definitely get her mindset on breaking school records, especially the 60, just some of the things I saw in training. I told her that, she needs to get her mind focused on breaking that school record. And so that was kind of her immediate focus. And she had a huge breakthrough, not only breaking the school record, but just missing out on making the NCAA indoor championships. So that was a huge motivator for her going into outdoor. And then she continues to have, great breakout season outdoor in both the 100 and the 2. And, our women's 4x1, I think, was a good indicator of just where that group is at and the direction we're headed with our women's sprint group. So, she, like I said, she's had a tremendous season. I'm hoping that, she'll make it in both the 1 and the 2 at US championships and be able to continue to build on those school records potentially.
And then speaking of that next trip to Eugene, you're a few days here in between before getting right back on a plane. Obviously, as we're recording this right now, still a little bit of it sounds like is still up in the air, but what are your overall expectations for next week?
Well, not only do we have great athletes in our program right now, but we have some great post-collegiate athletes that are still training here at Iowa. So Aaron Mallett, Jamal Britt are both 2 of the top hurdlers in the world right now, that are set up really well to potentially make the world championship team. It's just like any other meet, the goal is to make the final first. If you make the final, anything can happen. So Jamal just had a really fantastic race in New York last yesterday, actually, finishing 4th, but running a PR there. And then Aaron's over in Europe right now competing and getting ready for Eugene as well. But we got some great athletes. Nick is coming back in the shot put. That guy's had a tremendous season for us this entire season. And Nick Curtis is really on the way to doing some big things as a thrower. He's going to continue to compete post-collegiately as well. But he's, set a PR, last week. And, I think he's on the verge of another breakthrough as well. And then you just kind of look at just our overall team in general. I mean, we should have 2 women 400 hurdlers. Julian should make it in the 400 hurdles. Genoa, obviously, if he's healthy, he'll run the 400. So those are just our American athletes, but we have some foreign athletes as well that are competing for their championships also. So, we've got some other athletes that are going to, like Chris Douglas is trying to make the world championships. He's a post-collegiate athlete in both the high hurdles and the 400 hurdles. So it's great to have that environment where our student athletes are surrounded by world championship level and Olympic level athletes in our program that have gone through our program and that are continuing to compete at the highest level. So, that should be good. And, like I said, Lucero is hopefully battling to make that final in the 200 and kind of see what happens.
And then this might be a little early considering it's still June, but an early look at the 2022 cross country season. What are you expecting to see there?
Well, just continue to see development and growth and improvement in both the women and the men's team. That's another team group of athletes that we've seen some huge improvement, especially on the track over the last couple of years. Max Murphy and Nick Tratner kind of leading the men's squad, and both those guys, scored in the 5K indoor at the Big Ten championships. Max is one of the best 10K runners in the country this year and just missed out on making the national championships. But he's also our school record holder in the 1500. So, those guys have tremendous, depth as well as being able to kind of go across different events. So really excited about kind of the development of that group. And the women's team, we're led by a lot of really good young athletes that I think are going to come in and contribute. We got some great incoming freshmen, both men and women. So, it's always fun when you have a lot of new athletes that are hungry and motivated, that want to prove themselves. And I think that just, when you have a great depth in that event or in that in cross country in particular, you see the growth of that entire group moving up, because the guys that are kind of coming in maybe on the bottom of the pack, they're motivated, they're going to prove themselves, and then that's going to push the upper division of the group. So I'm hoping that we can, have a breakthrough, both men and women. And, last year we didn't have the best cross country season, but I think coming off of COVID and kind of missing a year of competition really affected their development. So I think having last year and then obviously a great track season, I think is going to bode well for both the men and the women.
Well, thanks for joining me.
You bet. Thanks for having me. It's good talking to you.
And good luck with packing part 2 to Eugene.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
My next guest on the Hawk Off the Press podcast is Tom Kakert, the editor and publisher of HawkeyeReport, the Iowa affiliate of the Rivals Network. Welcome back to the podcast, Tom.
Thanks for having me on, John. I always enjoy our conversations.
Me as well. So let's talk recruiting. It's been an interesting month. I think it's pretty much always an interesting month right now in the recruiting world. So most recently picking up a commitment from Kendrick Raphael, a 4-star running back from Naples, Florida. That's a pretty good get in another year with a 4-star running back that Waddell Betts has brought in.
Yeah, and getting down to the state of Florida, I think is important. They had just recently also gotten a week before a commitment from David Kakert, who had some really nice offers, a 3-star defensive lineman out of Des Moines North, but he had Iowa State, Minnesota offers, and Raphael was in Iowa City this past weekend on his official visit. So he got back home, and I think kind of saw what he needed to see to be comfortable. He had went to NC State the week before. He was scheduled to go to BYU, but he has decided that Iowa City is going to be his home. It was interesting because they also had Nolan Ray, another running back from Michigan, in this past weekend. And that's when you start to wonder, is this 2 guys competing for 1 spot, or are they open for 2? We have on our kind of hot board thing that Iowa has room for 1 or 2. I think it's going to kind of depend on what they get elsewhere too. So they may just kind of hold this and see what it looks like later on. Maybe after the dust kind of settles this month, because this month is just going to be gigantic for them on the recruiting trail.
And it seems to be the trend, not just with Raphael, but people committing to other schools, that it's not long after these official visits that you can sometimes get these decisions. And I think some of it probably goes down to the fact that, as you're mentioning, there are times where you've got 2 people in 1 spot. And if you like what you see on the official visit, it doesn't really make a ton of sense to wait around and risk something.
Yeah, and I had kind of hinted at that sometimes it's easier. I was talking about maybe the defensive line coming up, and with another kid who was on campus this past weekend, Will Helt, who is down to Iowa and Purdue. But just that, if you're only going to take 4 defensive linemen and you've already got 3 commitments now, when Kakert committed, that means all those guys that are scheduled to come in, or or like Helt coming in this past weekend, but other guys who are coming in later this month on official visits, you can kind of squeeze them sometimes and say, hey, if you're really thinking about us, you might want to get here because we got other guys who could commit and they have offers. So we like you, and you can kind of finesse them into getting there. So I don't know that that's what happened with Raphael, but it just seemed like it was a really good fit for him to come to Iowa, and gives them 11 commits now in this class. They're 16th in the Rivals rankings right now, which is a nice spot to be sitting at in June with and I think the hope is for Iowa, and we can talk more about this as we go along, but I think their hope is that they could get to around 20 by the end of the month if things go well.
And when you look at it too, with that 16 ranking, that's if they can, and obviously recruiting changes or recruiting class rankings change as we get to December. It'll look a lot different than it does now. But if they end up 16th for a school that doesn't have right now the NIL infrastructure yet, another thing we can talk about a little later, but doesn't have the NIL infrastructure in yet that some of the other schools in college football have. And for a school that's known more as a development program, a place that developed players like Riley Moss from really not looked at recruits into all Big Ten players, I'd say you'd be probably pretty happy if you end up in that 16th or probably anywhere around there too.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the team rankings right now, and it's a bizarro world right now. Of course, Notre Dame is number one, and they've been killing it, and they're always going to be up there, and Marcus Freeman's done a great job. But like number 2 right now is Texas Tech. Number 3 is Cincinnati. Number 4 is Northwestern. Okay, but they've got Texas Tech's got 20 commits, Cincinnati's got 20. So Luke Fickell really capitalized on that success. Northwestern's been on fire lately, and they're up to 18. So that's a volume play in a lot of ways, because you look at it, and I scroll down and I look and I find Alabama at 39 with just 4 commitments right now. They're not going to be there. LSU is not going to be 37. Michigan's not going to be 36. Texas isn't going to be 27th for very long. These other schools are going to bounce up there. But Iowa's sitting in a good spot with 11 commitments. And but it's interesting that the Big Ten right now has, Northwestern at 4, Ohio State 6, Penn State 7. You would expect them in the top 10, Michigan State 8, Minnesota at 14, and then Iowa and Rutgers are tied at 16.
So that's 7 in the top 17.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good spot to be in for the Big Ten at this point in the recruiting season.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's I think that's that they're getting their work done early in this process, and I think that's a positive for them. So we'll it always ends up, things can change quite a bit. Guys can, verbal commit is a verbal commit. And so, things can change, and they almost always do. So we'll see where it stands in December. But right now, you like where I was at with, getting it done in state with, 7 in-state or 6 in-state kids right now in this class. And they're off to a great start. We should mention in the 2024 class as well, where they're really, doing well in the in-state prospects with 4 verbal commitments in the 2024 class. And their team ranking right now, according to Rivals, and I know way early, but they're number 4 in the country with Preston Reese, Derek Weiskopf, Cam Buffington, and Cody Fox as their in-state commitments. So they're off to a really good start.
It seems like the in-state recruiting has been heating up a little bit. Iowa State has gotten a couple kids that I'm sure Iowa would have liked to have, with Black, with Ebo,
Patton.
and Patton. Yeah, those 3 all in probably a 6-day period, 7-day period.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and Iowa State's going to end up getting some of those kids, especially from the Des Moines area. I think it really helped them that they got JJ Cole, who's a legacy recruit at quarterback, and that I think helped with Kaya Black to get there. And Patton, I think, is pretty close with that group as well. So I think that certainly helped the Cyclones. But Iowa already has their quarterback in Marco Lainez, so I think they're pretty happy with his decision. Lainez did lose a star on Rivals this last month, he didn't impress them enough at the rivals camp in New Jersey in May. I think he's really talented, real good leader as quarterback. So I like the future there with him. And he was the guy that I want. So I think it's going to work out well for him.
Yeah, and you look at the lineage too with the various quarterbacks who've worked with Tony Rasiopi, the last two Iowa starting quarterbacks. I realize Spencer Petras is not the most popular person among the Iowa fan base, but Nate Stanley certainly had some success while he is in Iowa City. And Petras has been the starting quarterback, which when you look at it from a recruiting standpoint, you recruit a lot of quarterbacks and not many of them elevate themselves to that starting level. So, cue the Deuce Hogan mention right there. So, there's something to be said there too about Rasiopi's ability to churn out Iowa starting quarterbacks.
Yeah, and I think that's a positive too. That he'll he's kind of got a good grasp of what the Iowa quarterback position, what you need to do. Just because there's communication between Rasiopi and back when Ken was the quarterback coach, I know Tony Rasiopi and Ken O'Keefe talked a lot, and so there's some cohesiveness there that I think is going to help Spencer. Spencer's also got, by the way, he's supposed to be going to the Manning Passing Academy here.
Yeah, this month.
So that'll be a interesting thing for him to attend as well, and be interested to talk to Spencer about some of those opportunities that he's getting.
Especially because when you look at the other quarterbacks who've gone to that academy as a college counselor, it's a pretty impressive list there. And to have him being able to learn from the various people there when they aren't counseling the high school prospects, that's a pretty good group to be in.
Yeah, it is. And I think it'll benefit Spencer, help with his confidence, and hopefully it'll pay off on the field for him. I know a lot of Iowa fans are out on Spencer Petras. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
I understand it. But, he's going to be your starting quarterback more than likely, as long as he's healthy, to start the season. And, just our interactions, I'm a little biased. Spencer's just a great kid. You've gotten to know him too, John. And
yeah,
really good to us. So you want to see kids like that have a good season, and we'll see how Spencer does, but I'll remain hopeful for him, and hope he does have a good season.
And the other thing too is, okay, you look at it, it's almost like a tale of two seasons for Petras, because the first half of the year was a much different result than the second half. 9 of the 10 touchdowns were before Purdue, and 7 of the 9 interceptions were Purdue or later.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty stark difference there. So it's clear he was not 100% in that second half of the year. So that's another thing, I think, that sometimes it's easy to forget what the results were like when Petras was leading the 6-0 Iowa Hawkeyes. Yeah.
Injuries play a factor. I mean, you have to remember, he missed some action late in the year due to the injury. I remember the Northwestern game where he came out and played one series, and it was very evident that he was not right. And they yanked him and put Padilla in there, and Padilla was the quarterback for a couple games, and then Spencer had to come out of the bullpen against Nebraska and kind of saved the day in a lot of ways. So I'll never forget him coming in and goes, I didn't know if I'd get to talk to you guys anymore. So that's just, I'm glad he had that success, and there's plenty of time to debate that. I know we wanted to talk more recruiting anyway, so
Yeah, well, it's kind of a good segue here as we're talking about the California kid for the next thing I want to bring up. It seems like this 2023 class is a lot of geographic variety too, where you have the 6 in-state kids, but you've also got a good geographic balance. We were mentioning Inez, New Jersey, Florida, pretty much you name the state, it seems like, particularly in the Midwest, they've had a footprint there with this 2023 class.
Yeah, and you've got, Indiana in there. You're always going to get into Illinois a little bit. And New Jersey has traditionally been a place where Iowa has gotten players going back to the Hayden Fry years. And then the interesting one, I think, is that they've Chase Brackney from Colorado. And it's something that I talked to Iowa's director of recruiting, Tyler Barnes, about. They're trying to expand the map a little bit more. You've seen them offer some more kids in the kind of the Dallas Metroplex area to get back into Texas a little bit more. Tyler talked about, some of those times when he's actually been out on the road, when they've been down an assistant, and that he's been able to, maybe make some inroads in Colorado, and now they're going to try and recruit the state of Colorado a little bit more. And that led to a discussion about maybe trying to get down into the Phoenix area and having LeVar Woods go down to that neck of the woods where he once played for the Arizona Cardinals. And that was where Kyler Casper, who's going to Oregon. He's from that area. So they had kind of made some connections down there. And one of the offers they recently made was to, like, for example, Brian Urlacher's son, and who lives down in Arizona. So
the Iowa Twitterverse seemed to like that one.
Yeah, except for the Packer fans except for you and Morehouse.
Yeah, the Gazette tradition of having Packers fans as Hawkeye beat writers.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. Well, that little interim when you had a Cowboy fan in there.
Yeah, Leah had to shake that up, but then going right back to our wheelhouse. So, that was, I think, the prime qualification that got me this job. But yeah, you look at, it's interesting to see that changing footprint. And the 2 states that you mentioned, Colorado and Arizona, are not ones where you have a dominant top 25 program.
Yep.
They're year in, year out. And Iowa has been getting a little more attention lately with playing in the Big Ten championship game last year, also in 2015. So maybe you see a little more if they can keep the momentum that they had this past year, which obviously is easier said than done, considering this 2022 schedule is not easy in the Big Ten. But as maybe they get a little more visibility, maybe you see a little more success with that.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that they always look for when they pushed into Georgia, several years back, and got a guy like Tyler Goodson, for example. One of the thoughts when they started getting into that area was you've got direct flights from Atlanta to Cedar Rapids, and I think that's kind of one of those selling points with the looking at Phoenix. You've got flights that go directly from Phoenix Mesa to Cedar Rapids or the Quad Cities, and
now you too have Phoenix Sky Harbor going into Cedar Rapids. So my business reporter knowledge here coming in handy on the sports beat.
Yeah, so it's so you've got those direct flights just make all the difference in the world to parents who want to fly up and see their kid, and if they can come in on a Friday and go back on a Sunday, hey, that's perfect for family and to come up and see their kid play football. So I think that's going to be, why they're trying to get into Phoenix. Well, Arizona State and Arizona are struggling a little bit, and maybe the Pac-12 doesn't recruit it as hard, or you can get some decent players out of there. In Colorado, I think there's some flights that you can get from Denver to various places. So you can make that a workable trip for parents. So just so important part of the equation, and that's why Dallas. You get flights every day coming from Dallas to Cedar Rapids.
Yeah, and parents want to see their kids play. That's one thing that is abundantly clear, and as a lot of things can change in college football, that's kind of one of the few things that really seems to always be a constant in recruiting is, hey, parents want to see their kids play, considering how much time they've invested and money invested in various camps and such, that you want to be able to see the dreams come into fruition, and that's a perk there.
Absolutely. It's a total perk. So we'll see how that goes. See if they can make something happen.
Yeah, and then another thing, it seems like the NIL space is constantly evolving. You talked a little bit with the future person in charge of the collective, who right now doesn't want his name out there yet. But what have you? So for now, although I'm sure it will get out pretty quickly, considering it doesn't take much searching to put 2 and 2 together. But what have you been hearing on the collective front?
Yeah, so we had a podcast, and it happens to be one of the guys from our message board who is kind of spearheading this. Now, he is not going to be the director. He has hired someone who I think might be starting next week. So with the Swarm Collective, they're getting the website built out so fans can go there and make contributions and do those sorts of things. I think they're trying to line up some seed money to kind of get things going a little bit. And so it's going to be a 501c3 for part of it. There's also going to be an LLC on the other side of it. So there's kind of two paths that fans or businesses can get involved. And they're not looking to make this be like a recruiting inducement. Now that would be illegal, but there are people who are doing that. Obviously, you've seen these guys getting, hundreds of thousands of dollars in endorsements when they commit to a school. That's, I think, kind of against the spirit of what this was supposed to be, but it is what it is. The toothpaste is out of the tube and it's not going back in. But Iowa is just not going to hand players, checks for $400,000, for example, to come to a school. They're just not. That's not how they're. At least on the football side, I'll just say that. I think maybe basketball has to operate differently. But I think Kirk is most comfortable, and we're talking about football today. I just think that's where they're going to be is in that space where they're going to try and build up a fund and give as many of the guys as they can, like $1,500 a month or something, or $1,000 a month, depending on how much people contribute to it, and make that a regular contribution they would get a monthly kind of stipend, if you will, and they're going to tie it to doing charity work and doing work for others, helping out with events, not from nonprofit organizations and things of that nature. So it's kind of a win-win to raise awareness for good causes that need supporting, and also they're going to make some decent money. I mean, over 12 months, it's a decent little chunk of change that can add up, I think. And that doesn't preclude them from making their own deals, like Caitlin Clark making a deal with Hy-Vee.
Yeah.
Making a deal with a wrestling company of some sort. They can also make those deals too. So, but I think they want to do some more facilitation with that to facilitate partnerships between student athletes and companies that might be looking. And so that's where the LLC arm could potentially help make those things happen as well.
And one thing you said that I want to emphasize to listeners, because I think it's probably one of the most common misconceptions, is this is not the, okay, such and such recruit is going to get an $8 million check from the Iowa collective.
Yeah.
Even though there are collectives that have been rumored to be doing those things, that's not what is happening here at Iowa. This is, if it's $1,000 a month, that's $12,000 a year. If they get up to 2,000, that's $24,000 a year. Which, if you were to give me $24,000 when I was a college sports reporter at Marquette, I would have been a very happy college student.
Yeah.
And I think pretty much any college student is going to be happy with that amount, but it's not going to be, at least it doesn't appear to be, these astronomical numbers.
If somebody wants to step up and give them millions and millions of dollars, then that's going to change the equation. But at this point, it looks like it's just going to be more along the lines of kind of a nice stipend. And that's going to go along with, I think something that you reported on too, the academic performance incentives, where they can give them some money for that.
Yeah, up to $5,980, $5,980 a year.
And that's a nice, if when I was in college, if I would have got a $6,000 check, I would have been a very happy man.
Probably would have been taking that to the nearest bar or tavern of some sort.
Or a casino. Yeah. But back in my day, we didn't have the casino, only in Vegas. Back in my day, we did not have the casino. So,
yeah, it's a great point with the academic reward payments too, how that adds another thing that obviously not anything mind blowing, but those things add up. I think if you took a poll of the Iowa student athlete population, I don't think there'd be many people opposed with the $5,980 payments. And one of the things that I heard after reporting on that from some fans is concern about if this is going to mean higher ticket pricing or something for Iowa fans. And when you look at the grand scheme of things, $5,980 spent per athlete, and that's the maximum. That's a pretty small drop in the bucket for the Iowa athletic department, relatively speaking, compared to other things. When Kirk, for example, gets paid $7 million plus incentives, the total for if every athlete got the maximum, wouldn't be half of that.
Yeah, and you look at it, if a football player is there for 5 years and gets, 20 grand a year, I mean, that's, $100,000 is not something to sneeze at during your college career. I mean, that's when you add it up and look at it from that perspective, it's a nice chunk of change, that you would have gotten $100,000, and that's not including, going out and hustling your own buck too, doing your own thing, selling gear and things like that. So, it's all right.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, how I think across Iowa athletics, the opinions on NIL have shifted, where Lisa Bluter was saying at an event I was at earlier in the offseason that she was an NIL skeptic early on, and how she's really changed her tune on it. So as you said, the toothpaste is out of the bottle. This is the college sports world that we live in these days.
This is going to be the world we live in from here on out. It's not going away. So you might as well embrace it and get comfortable with it. And the thing that I've noted to a lot of people is that, because they'll always ask me, well, Tom, why is Iowa so far behind? There are a lot of places that you can imagine that have done well so far, where the infrastructure to do these sorts of things was already in place in a more of a, let's just say, a black market kind of thing, if you will. And they have been able to kind of move those more quickly because they have an infrastructure that has been set up already, and probably amped up even more because now it's, quote unquote, and I'm doing air quotes here, legal to do. So that's why you see some places getting up and going, and where Iowa, where this is just sort of like, it's not what they do. Just not what Iowa does. Iowa doesn't play it, haven't played in that sandbox. So they're trying to do it. It's been a heavy lift to get it up and running. Some guys that were trying to get it going early, I think kind of got frustrated or just weren't as passionate about it as Tex Hawk, my message board guy, who's who just got involved and took the bull by the horns and made it happen. Because if he didn't do that, I'm not sure where they'd be at with the collective right now. I don't know.
And the other thing too is it isn't like Iowa has a Phil Knight. There are only so many of those people who just have the unlimited checkbook. Obviously, there have been some very generous donors for Iowa. Obviously, like the Moon family comes to mind right away.
Like Will and Renee Moon, who gave like what $10 million to the football program, and
which
others.
Makes Kirk Ferentz the Moon head coach, not just any head coach.
Yes, he's now the Will Moon head coach. So.
Yeah. So that's the other thing too, I think that's important for people to remember is, okay, there isn't, some places have been very fortunate with having one alum with a very, very big wallet. And there are people with big wallets, but maybe not that big of wallets to get this thing going. And you don't know how sustainable the places that have been getting these 7-figure enticements are what's going to happen there.
What's going to happen when somebody who spent $500,000 on a recruit, and then that recruit just turns out not to be great, and the coach is never playing them? Your return on investment is not as strong, or those kids get frustrated. It's because the way they've set these up, where they do those big payments, it's almost like a personal services contract in a lot of ways, is how they structure it. You can't say in any of those contracts, there's got to be a contract to get the money and perform certain services, be it, Instagram posts or Twitter posts or showing up at events or birthday parties or, whatever it is, autograph signings at a car dealership, however you set it up. But nowhere in there can it say you have to sign to go play football at school X. It's almost like it's personal service between the collective. Now it's implied, obviously, you're not going to give money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then he's not going to go to your school. But it's kind of like, it's the wink wink part of the how business is done.
Yeah. And all of this coming into, it's a whole new world. Shorter term though than the discussion on collectives, which, not going anywhere. We'll have that for seemingly now on. Seems like this last weekend in June will be the big visit weekend for Iowa, having one recruit in earlier in the week so then they can get out to North Carolina. But it seems to be that June 24th through 26th, the Hanson Football Performance Center will be hopping with possible future Hawkeyes.
Yeah, right now it's going to end up, it could change because there are guys who verbally commit elsewhere that have kind of, and we've seen some of that already. But there may be some additions too. So we'll see what happens. Right now they're at 24, which is an enormous. I think 25 is like where they feel more comfortable. I think it was at 28 at one point. So it's a lot of guys. Now it is worth noting that 9 of them are currently committed. So guys like Aiden Hall and Alex Moda and Chase Brackney and John Nestor and Zach Lutmer and guys like that, Lainez. They're all going to be in town that weekend on official visits. So I guess Lainez is not. Yeah, he is. He's going to be on, I think. So anyway, but those guys will be on their officials. So they're trying to, I think, lock down a good number of guys. I think we could expect a decision one way or another from like Will Helt, who visited last weekend, and he's down to Iowa and Purdue. He's a defensive end, 6'6", 240. But he could make a decision at any time, and that may fill out their requirement of defensive linemen. Now they still might take another one. We'll see. But they'd be getting close to full at some of the positions. Like they're only going to take one quarterback. So that's why you don't see any more. Once the quarterback spot gets filled, it's filled. So,
yeah, that's why Iowa wasn't trying to get Cole for a while.
Yeah, they had, because he was going to actually come in to visit. Then Lainez committed, and the positions I'm looking at right now, like wide receiver with Bryson Vowell and Jerron Tibbs coming in for visits, and we've got them at like 50% on our board. So I could see, if they get both those guys to go with Moda, then you're up to the three wide receivers. Obviously, offensive line is super interesting especially with Caden Proctor, who's touring the country right now, and not taking an official to Iowa, but I'm told he's going to be visiting for one of the games during the season. Maybe Iowa State, might be Michigan, who knows? But the 5-star top offensive lineman in the country, he's Bama and Penn State and Oregon and every place else.
You name it.
Yeah, he can go wherever he wants to go. But I still, I put in my fearless forecast for him to Iowa back in December. I haven't wavered from it. I'm not as confident as I was at that point in time, but I'm still, we're still having at 50% on our board. I'm more above 50%, but I'm not at the like 99% that I was at one point, just because you never know
And when he's taking official visits to a bunch of other schools, they can have some pretty strong sales pitches.
Yeah. And lots of bags, probably. As we're seeing in the golf tour, you throw enough money at people, they do things. So there's another kid, Chris Tarek, from Glen Ellen, Illinois, who's coming in for a visit that I think Iowa's got a great shot at getting. So that'll be a position where they're looking to lock up. Asa Newsome from Waverly is coming in on his visit and looking to get one more linebacker to go with Ben Keeter and Aiden Hall, two in-state kids. So, and I think defensive back is going to be a real focus for Phil Parker with Khalil Tate coming in. Bo Masco, a kid from Florida, is coming in for a visit.
And Masco with a decision coming pretty soon too.
Yeah. So we got to see what happens with some of these defensive backs, but I know they want to get 4 or 5 this year, and right now they've got 2.
Well, Tom, thanks for joining me again.
Absolutely, anytime, and always a pleasure to talk recruiting with the Gazette podcast.
Yes, pleasure is all mine. Thank you to our listeners for tuning into another episode of the Hawk Off the Press podcast. I'll be back with another episode next week. Until then, we will talk Hawks later.